Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the TBT Show. I'm Anthony Moten, and my co-host, my partner in crime, Sean Aguilar is here, and we're excited to start this first episode. Sean, how are you? How's things?
Man, better than I deserve.
Yes,
Thankful
sir.
for things being as well as they are.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Yes, sir. Great. Excited about episode number 1. And so kind of to lay the template so we'll know exactly what our episodes will be about. We're going to start with some with the groundwork. First, our characters, who we are, just so you guys will know who we are and what we're trying to do. Again, my name is Anthony Moten. I am a third generation African American pastor preacher, and grew up in Northeast Houston, Lakewood to be specific. Parents grew up in mom grew up in City Gas, and so I'm Northeast Houston through and through. And so a lot of our concerns will be based on my upbringing from Northeast Houston. My commentary will be based on where I came from, which is Northeast Houston. And so, Sean, I don't think you're too far from, you're Northeast Houston too, right?
Northeast Houston as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Aldine, to be specific.
What?
We're going to get straight into it. 5'4". Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So listen, hey, so again, and our connection, which we'll get into I'm Northeast Houston, but me and Sean kind of grew up differently. And I believe that a lot of times how we view things is based on the experiences that we've seen and gone through. And so I'm a product of North Forest Independent School District. I went to East Houston Elementary School, Kirby Middle School, and graduated from the MB Smiley High School. And so a lot of my commentary and thought about things is drawn from that culture growing up in North Forest. North Forest was, before it was swallowed by Houston Independent School District, North Forest was a family district. The uniqueness of North Forest was I was sitting in classrooms where I saw teachers in the grocery store, and I saw them at churches. Our churches fellowshipped with each other. Funny story, and I'm going somewhere, but this funny story. My kindergarten teacher was very impactful to my life, even beyond kindergarten, Miss Davis, and she's the mother of our ex-city councilman, Jerry Davis. My brother is Marcus Davis, owns the Breakfast Club.
Oh, yeah.
Their mom was my kindergarten teacher.
Wow.
And so some years ago, we had an opportunity. We were sitting at this event, and he's on to give me some type of, award for something. And I blew up a picture of me in the kindergarten and his mom, and I slid it over the table to him. So that was funny. But North Forest, we were a family, man. Siblings going to school. If a teacher didn't know me, they knew my older brother. We were, it was just a big family. And so even though it was a public school district, it had a private school kind of feel.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and I know you came up,
private school.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of our commentary is based on our experiences, and so I'm excited. I know your experiences are different from mine.
Yes.
And let me say this, and then Sean will take it. Our connection, believe it or not, I believe was divinely orchestrated. Sean is more than just a friend; he's a brother. His
Bless you, man.
His father in the ministry was my brother, Michael Craig Davis, the Reverend Michael Craig Davis,
Senior.
So yes, sir. And so, as I was growing up, and he was giving me a lot of things, and sickness kind of struck his body, and as Sean was kind of coming along, I just took it on myself to kind of, give Sean some of the things that Michael Davis gave to me, and so that formed our friendship, our connection. And so, let me say, even before we get into the episodes to come, that me and Sean are good. We're friends. And so even when we don't agree about something, we're our connection goes far beyond the commentary of one or two things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Sean is a thoughtful guy, and so he's well thought out some things. So there's going to be a couple things that we may not see eye to eye on, but again, we're brothers, and again, and hopefully we can, for this generation, we can speak to the goal of even when we disagree. In the words of Sean, we don't have to be disagreeable.
Correct.
So again, I don't, so that's kind of our character and our connection. I know Sean wants to go deeper into his character. I know he's,
So a lot of similarities, also born and raised on the northeast side of Houston. Some differences though. The first public school that I ever attended was the University of Houston. So I had a private school education, all the way from pre-kindergarten all the way through graduating from St. Pius X High School in Acreage Homes. And yeah, exactly. And so, but born and raised in Houston, Texas. I'm a first generation preacher and pastor. And so being raised in Northeast Houston, and then also in terms of, the education, I've lived in Houston my entire life, traveled all over, but always maintained primary residence, here in Houston. And as you said, we met as I was licensed to preach by Pastor Michael C. Davis Sr. And that's how we came to meet. And really appreciate, being that big brother, over the years. And it's definitely helped me in terms of life and ministry, In terms of character, I'm a elder at the Good Shepherd Missionary Baptist Church.
Northeast Houston.
Northeast Houston. Yes, sir. Where our pastor is Reverend Lee E. Skinner. And definitely appreciate him for all the guidance and leadership that he provides.
Yeah.
But educated at the College of Biblical Studies here in Houston. And that has informed, and shaped how I approach the Bible and how I view the world. Right. So as you said, in terms of, that gives a little bit of background in terms of, character and connections, how we're connected to the city of Houston and beyond. And then that brings us to the concerns, the concerns of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the great thing, and Sean mentions is, and he's educated through the College of Biblical Studies. I spent some time at CBS, ultimately received my bachelor's from Oral Roberts University. So again, we are both educated and trained from a biblical or church perspective. But again, I think the concern of our show, and I want us to kind of draw some baseline so that we're kind of here. We just want to look at crisis of the day, whatever that is, and speak some truth to it. One of my things, and I think we can all agree that the church, or at least our spiritual circles, has often either lied about things or gave commentary that wasn't completely true, or even if they were truth, they were not full. Even though they might have been not incorrect, they were incomplete. And so we just want to address some things that are going on in our culture, because again, in order for us to fix it, we got to face it, right? We got to tell the truth about what it is in order for us to even start, looking at ideas as to what'll fix it. And so one of the things that I want this time to be, and our show to be about, and our connection to be about, is just authentic answers. They may not be, right to say on a Sunday morning right after Sunday school, But I believe in order for us to address what ails our community, our city, state, and even our world, is we gotta start being honest about where we are and what's going on with where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that, we have situations where there are certain things that have been said traditionally, but that, like you said, may not have been incorrect, but they're incomplete. It may not be a full picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm excited for us to look at today's topics in light of timeless truth.
Light of timeless truth.
Where what's happening today, we do have to figure out how to view it. And everyone has a worldview, whether they can articulate it or not. Everyone has a particular worldview. And so hopefully through some discussions between us and guests that we can arrive at some authentic answers and solutions, based on the biblical worldview. So I'm excited to see where it all goes.
I am. And so you'll get an opportunity as we spend time together, as we address issues, you'll get an opportunity to see what my public school system maybe has created an outview versus what Sean's private school education and system has done. And so again, there will be times where we may not fully agree about an issue, but I know if Sean says that this is his stance on it, he spent some time thinking about it and angling it, and I as well. And so even when we don't agree about a thing, I think it'll be helpful, not just for me and him as we talk, but to those that listen, so that we can look at one issue in multiple different ways. And even though we don't, may not see it the way someone else sees it, we can at least respect the fact that they see it that way. So there are a lot of issues in our world. And I don't want to beat up the same issues, but we'll throw out a couple today as templates for what will be going forward in our time together. And again, and I know somebody's scratching their head, what does TBT stand for? But this show was founded, the idea child. Initially TBT is truth be told. Mm-hmm. And I believe in this generation that's what we're lacking. We're lacking a lot of truth. Mm-hmm. And so there's a couple issues in our world that we can lift even as ideas. I know everybody's tired of it, but just so you can see an example of what the show will be about, the basis of it will be the issue that happened at the coveted Oscar Awards between Will Smith and Chris Rock. Me and Sean both called each other the next morning with a laundry list of jokes and whatnot. And I think both of us were just kind of shocked by it all. And then, basically giving some time and some thought around it, of course, my commentary, like many others, and I know some people are cheering him and, supporting Will Smith for what they consider to be an act of protection for Jada. I didn't see it as such. And although very sympathetic about what Jada's going through, and very in tune to that, I don't think that his actions were a sign of protection or came from a place of protection. And so immediately me and Sean got on the phone and we were talking to each other about it. And y'all will get to know Sean is very insightful. And so he said some things that that intrigued thought on my end. I was more the hood in me was more upset than anything.
Yeah.
That Will responded as such. One, I think it, for our culture, it's not a good look. And so that was on my mind. And then in the place of Chris Rock, I'm thinking in my head, I wish somebody would but
The wish
again,
factor.
yes, sir. But again, for us, and again, we can fix it when we face it. That's just not something that we want to either do or give to our children as an idea of what needs to be done.
Right.
I share with Sean and old school know. We played the dozens at school all the time.
Yeah.
And if it ever escalated to a physical altercation, when you got home, the first thing your mother or father was going to say is, they can say whatever about us, they don't know us. And you just, a joke's a joke.
Right.
You can't escalate words into a physical confrontation. And so issues like that, I think, need to be addressed because, again, it's the idea of what's being taught and handed to the next generation. So Will's son, I don't know, Sean, if you saw that, Will's son came out the next day and tweeted,
"That's how we do it.
This is how we do it." What are we giving the next generation?
Right.
And so, you never want to be sitting in a courtroom with somebody who's about to lose some time or freedom because they did something saying that it was protecting somebody else because of words.
Right. And so, I agree with everything that you said. There's so many different layers to this type of situation.
Right.
And the situation in terms of Will Smith getting up out of his chair and his reaction to words was to go to war.
Right. Right.
That just because Chris Rock said words, he felt that he was justified. And so, as far as the argument that it was protection, I think it was more projection than protection.
Right.
This had more to do even with Will Smith than with Jada.
Yeah.
Because you got to take into account that Chris Rock had to pay the tab that Will Smith's father, that August Alsina, and internet commentators ran up.
Right.
Chris Rock just so happened to be the unfortunate recipient of the slap heard round the world.
Right.
But it has a lot to do, and you can see it in Will Smith's book, where he lists out, the trauma that he felt from his childhood, where he had a father that was abusive to his mother, and he felt like he was a coward because at that time he couldn't stand up for his mother.
Right.
So now you have that imprinted onto his wife. When the dynamics of their marriage is a whole other ball of wax that has a whole other set of layers and a whole other set of complexities. So on the one hand, obviously it cannot be condoned. It's kind of like I think it was Chris Rock that talked about he understood OJ. It's like, if he had done it, but I understand, type of deal. It's like Will Smith, I don't agree with what you did, but I understand what put him. I feel like I have an understanding.
Right.
I can't say that I understand everything about it, but I feel like I have a degree of understanding about what puts a man like Will Smith in the mental and emotional space to feel like that's his only option.
Right.
And so that brings up, in terms of the larger conversation around mental health, relationship dynamics, and forgiveness.
Right. And look, so what does the church have to say about mental health? What does the church have to say about relationship dynamics? What does the church have to say about forgiveness? And again, this is the entire foundation concern for why we decided to do this show, right? Because for years, mental health has not been on the church's radar. Matter of fact, we generations ago, we took it as an act of working outside of faith to go and address those kind of issues with somebody. Or even, what do we say about relationships? I would tell anybody. And again, I'm a preacher, pastor, love God, love worship God, love church. but the church has woefully mishandled our mindset as it relates to two things in particular. One is money.
Yes.
And and where we grade money, we put money high on the charts. So one is money, the other one is sex. And so while we would, we talk around it in church environments, it is the church that mishandles the youth of both of them. So, you look at Will and Jada in that relationship, and the fact that you would highlight those three areas, that would, a good understanding of those three areas would have kept him in that chair that night.
Correct.
But not having it made him respond in a way. And again, my thing is, hey, it happens. All of us make mistakes. No big deal. I'm just more concerned about what we're placing in the hand of the next generation. Because I'll say this, and my son, my oldest son, who will be on the show at some point in the future, who is, grew up, as a baby in North Forest, and ultimately HSD, graduated from C.E. King Sheldon Independent School District, went to University of Texas in Austin, ran through it in 4 years. We're celebrating at the top of next month, graduating from Memphis. Good kid, good head on his shoulders. Called me the next day and we're talking about it. And he said, I understand the Will was protecting Jada. And I was like, okay, don't take it like that, because I don't want you to go to jail trying to protect. And again, it's what we're placing in the hand of the next generation, because we'll take something that is abnormal and make it normal. So now this is the expectation. If I fought, everybody that said anything about me, I would be fighting every day. At some point, sometimes you show a bigger strength by responding a certain way or not responding at all. And so, again, it's what, so what do we have to say about it as a church? So truth be told, as it relates to Will and that whole debacle, is what exploded that night at the Oscars was a match that was lit a long time ago.
Yeah. And
because it was never really resolved before that night, it exploded. And again, there's nobody is saying that Will is wrong and deserves death or whatever. No. Whatever. We're just saying this is how you get to those moments, by mishandling our understanding of what what it does mean to forgive. If you can forgive and remember, it's not real forgiveness. Right. It's completing, letting it go, because if you don't let it go, it, sitting up at the Oscars, it'll, so, again, it's just our idea of these areas that I believe if we address some truth to it, then we'll be able to, approach it the way it should be.
Right. And what people believe about a particular topic, or and it's not necessarily just theological, doctrinal, but what people believe determines how they behave.
Absolutely.
So if you behavior modification is going to rely on your will. Right. How much fortitude you have to, quote unquote, stick to your guns. Right. Does that make sense? Right. But if we can have right belief, then that will usually result in right behavior.
Right.
But most often we look at just behavior modification. But if you teach someone what they believe, what they should believe and why they should believe it, then there's a conviction there that will provide a foundation so that you can make those right decisions in those moments. Because looking back, I'm sure Will Smith would concede that was not the right decision, because he has since apologized, and it's cost him a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he's losing the opportunity to work and do projects that were already on the table. Mm-hmm. There was a Will Smith biopic, that was in the works. Apple TV and Netflix were literally bidding on this. Right. They have both since removed themselves from the negotiations and from the table. Bad Boys 4
Right.
was in the works, on pause,
Right.
you know? So this one thing that Will Smith did, and the goal was to keep Jada Smith's name
Out of his mouth.
out of the mouth of Chris Rock. I'm cleaning it up a little bit.
Right.
I'm not doing an exact verbatim quote here. I'm trying to clean it up. All right. But it had literally the exact opposite consequences.
Right.
The exact opposite.
Right.
So what he did put Jada's name in millions, if not billions, of people are now speaking on him and her.
Right.
You have some comedians that are now going out of their way.
Right.
to work that in and take digs at him and at her.
Hey.
You know? And so I'm confident with if hindsight being 2020, if he could go back and change it, he probably would.
He would.
You know?
And that's and again, that's, you know, given a moment, and that's why it's important to have some semblance of truth approaching no matter what the situation is. Because, you know, my mom used to tell me all the time, if you act up at school, I'm gonna come up there and I'm gonna act up where you act up.
Right.
And because I believed her,
you didn't act up.
I didn't, because proper belief produces proper behavior. Like,
right.
You know, so I didn't do what other kids did.
Right.
Because I believe what mama said at home. And so, like, if you approach every situation with some semblance of truth, if Will would have had a moment to just think, what's the risk?
Right.
Right. So me getting up, slapping Chris, what's the risk? Maybe I'll be able to, or maybe I'll, the Oscar that I'm going to win, because it was a foregone conclusion when he showed up, that he was going to win. So the Oscar that I'm going to win, I might have to give it back. There might be some other consequences. So what's the reward? What? Because the joke is already said.
Right.
No matter how hard you slap him, you can't take words back.
Right.
It's already out there. So, now looking at risk versus reward, he lost a lot.
Right.
But didn't gain anything.
No.
And that's the problem when approaching life with, with no semblance of truth. You get, things slide completely out of control. Yeah. And I don't want to pick on Will.
Yeah, no. I mean, because here's the deal. We can all put ourselves in some type of way in those shoes when we are offended.
Right.
But we can look at this moment as a cautionary tale that regardless of your socioeconomic status, your fame, your bank account balance, the title on your business card, no one is too big to fail.
Right. Right.
Fame is given by men and it can be taken away.
Absolutely.
Opportunities are given and they can be taken away.
Absolutely.
But when you operate out of fear, which he said later that love will make you do crazy things.
Right.
But I would say that when I'm looking at him, when I see the video and watch him, his facial, features, and just, he's gripped by fear.
Right.
In my estimation, in my humble opinion.
Right. Not love, but fear.
Not love, but fear.
Okay.
And anytime that we're operating out of fear, it's usually going to produce negative results because we're looking at the problem that's immediately in front of us.
Right.
But it's not, Will Smith's problem was not Chris Rock. He perceived that because he thought that this joke was going to somehow cause him this tremendous levels of embarrassment, whether publicly in the press or privately at home.
Yeah.
But he ended up taking a situation where it was a very mild joke that probably everyone would have forgotten
Right.
in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Right.
And now everyone will remember this for 10 years.
Right. For a lifetime. Yep. Absolutely. 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 So those are and again, it's just addressing issues of the day with some real response from, a spiritual religious point of view that I feel like we need to address. I don't want people to feel like we're going to pick on, Will Smith, Chris Rock, or any of them.
No, because there's some things that we can look at in terms of, because there's some things we can look at in terms of Will Smith positively and Chris Rock negatively,
right,
and vice versa.
Right.
So, to be fair,
right.
I'm not sure what amount of knowledge Chris Rock had about Will's situation.
Right.
I'm not even her condition. I'm sorry. I personally, and I'll just go ahead and share this. I had alopecia as a child, very mild case. Okay. All that it means is that some of your hair falls out. Now I have a shaven head,
right.
But it was actually, I want to say I was about 8 or 9 years old. It was just a small, about a quarter size patch of hair just fell out, but then grew back like nothing even happened. Right. 80% of men and 50% of women will experience symptoms of alopecia. It's just part of the normal aging process. Okay. So the condition that she already said that she had made her peace with and is, all that different stuff, save the fake outrage. So I'm not really even, I'm not even really going to give any credence to that part of it. Really more about the situation. Right. Red table talk. Everybody knew about, that there was some distress in the home, and there was, issues in terms of the marriage dynamics, right?
Now maybe I think Willow posted something.
Oh my goodness!
About the Tupac thing.
An open letter to the Tupac. So Will Smith, is competing with a dead man for his wife's affection.
Right.
It's rough. Does that make sense? Now Chris Rock may not be aware of that.
Right.
Okay. But he's about to win an Oscar. It's sensitive, or you may or may not know.
Right.
But let's say that he at least knew some basics things that, hey, look, it's not, sunshine and lollipops at the Smith household.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
This may not be the person to pick on, or if you're going to pick on him, pick on Will. Does that make sense? Pick on him directly.
Right.
I mean, talk about whatever you want to talk about, but that's sensitive, or he may have known that's sensitive. So that may not have been the wisest decision.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And that's really all I can say in terms of Chris Rock is just really selection of material and things of that nature. But there's no way for us to know his mindset, what he knew.
Walking heavy on thin ice.
Right. But he didn't know.
I don't think
I don't think he did.
He thought this may require him to get up and come up here and say
no, absolutely not. I'm just saying, to be fair, if we're gonna offer, a fair assessment, criticism of the situation, here's one thing that could be the case.
Bad choice of joke.
Right. Bad choice of joke, bad choice of material, so on and so forth. As far as for Will, hey, in terms of his career, I mean, I grew up watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Everyone did.
I mean, tremendous actor, big fan of the movies. And Will Smith is always playing this, alpha male, Mike Lowry, type of situation, or superhero like Hancock or whatever. So he's used to being in that role. So I'm sure he feels extraordinarily uncomfortable that he can be what he wants to be in fantasy, but he can't be what he wants to be in reality.
Right. And reality reminded much of the kid Will Smith.
The kid.
I cannot protect the woman that is,
Right. Near and dear to me.
Right.
That is the woman that I love is being attacked, and I can't do it. I heard one YouTuber say that he may have made a decision inside himself that the next time someone comes for me and mine, I'm going to respond, heavily. Does that make sense?
Right.
And he just so happened to, like you said, walking heavy on thin ice, and that's the deal. So that doesn't make, because we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory, and so it's not to say that Chris Rock is this, he handled everything perfectly,
Right.
and Will Smith is just a terrible human being. Both of them made decisions, and they have to live with the consequences of those decisions.
Right.
But I would say that overall, Will Smith came out of this situation much more worse for wear than Chris Rock.
Okay.
Chris Rock got huge publicity going into a nationwide tour.
Right.
Right. Ticket sales went up exponentially, both in amount of tickets sold and the price of said tickets. So and he hasn't gotten as much vocal support from celebrities, because some people have gone with Will Smith because he's got more star power,
right?
But the issue is that he has the moral high ground. Right, because absolutely. He literally took the slap and turned the other cheek. He had the opportunity to tear Will Smith down, and showed the restraint to say, hey, look, I know it's a bad situation. I don't want to make it any worse. I'm just going to remove myself. Right. He left the Oscars and has not said anything public. Now, his brother has.
Yeah. And his brother said it in a vein on a show. Right, and I think that's the pump's ticket sales.
Right, of course, yeah, that's the game.
Right.
Yeah,
Tony's funny. He's funny.
He's funny.
He used that to be funny. So,
sure, no, absolutely. Right, but that's the deal. But Chris Rock still has not pressed any charges, hasn't made a public statement.
He's not going to.
No, he doesn't need to, because here's the deal: his actions on that stage spoke louder. Right. There's nothing. Right. I mean, he literally took the slap. And when I say took the slap, he took it. I mean, didn't fall down. I'm just talking about from a physical standpoint. Right. Ate that slap. Right. So I'm, kind of disappointed with Will Smith. Yeah. You trained for Ali and you can't put nobody down. I mean, knees didn't even buckle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. So that's a whole other subject.
Well, look here. And so we're swinging. Speaking of mistakes and falling short. Mm-hmm. And I don't want anybody to think we're picking on just the secular arena. Mm-hmm.
Oh Lord,
there was a story, and I'm not gonna say a name. There's a story that was released of a Florida pastor, that was videotaped in a
compromising position,
in a compromising, homosexual. Sexual
entanglement.
Yeah.
Since we're right. Pardon the pun.
Right. Flow with the wheel thing. Yeah, entanglement.
Entanglement.
And so again, because so now it's like mistakes compounded, because now you have this church that is productive and moving and a very vibrant active church has now been set back. Because their lead servant is caught in this bad situation. Now, before anybody even starts, and this bad situation, he's a married man, but a married man who now this has proven not only infidelity, but a hypocrisy, because he's very vocal about same-sex relationships being, against God's will and design for life. And so, now this has not only exposed his frailty in his own humanity, but also frailty in his ministry. Mm-hmm. If you're going to stand and be a starched opposition to homosexuality, and then this tape comes out, whatever. And so, and again, as so the church from years ago, and I'm saying the church, religious pundits from years ago would have a lot to say, I guess in rejection of a man in that kind of situation. And it seems as though we would let a man make it if it was a videotape of him and a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and here's the truth, because and often I've been throwing this around in my head all day.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my head, I would be, even if it was a woman, yeah, you know, that proves infidelity in your marriage, but at least it's natural in my own head.
Gotcha.
And now this just seems to be so much worse. So, truth be told, is this greater? Is this a greater misstep because it is a homosexual relationship, sexual activity that he's involved in? Or is this just, hey, it's a mistake, it's a sin, it's a faux pas, it's a sin against his own body, or it's a sin against, you know, his marriage of his wife? Or is this a greater issue because it does involve, you know, a homosexual relationship?
Right. And just to give, you know, the fullest, you know, representation of the story, the pastor has denied, this particular Florida pastor has denied that that's him. However, there are many that believe that it in fact was him in this particular video. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's not a good look. If it is the case, especially whenever the degree of hypocrisy shows up, because now it can be perceived that if there's an issue with the messenger, that discounts the message.
Absolutely.
You know, and so that's something that everyone appreciates, someone that is authentic, that lives out what they say. And it makes it easy for detractors to tear you down,
right,
whenever you have such a wide opening of hypocrisy in life and ministry.
Right.
You know, so.
And see, and while I agree, being authentic is, it is, I believe, what God is calling us to, especially those of us who proclaim the gospel. But I think it's okay to be authentically honest about where you are. Like all
Correct.
of us
Yeah, absolutely.
you know,
all of us have, you know, issues and things that we struggle with.
Right.
I think the big thing about this story is that he was very much leaning in to teaching and preaching against homosexuality.
Right.
Above and beyond
the
like
normal.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's kind of like you put this special emphasis on that issue, but it turns out you're struggling with it yourself.
Right.
So I think that's something that really caught people on this particular story, and what makes it go viral, because just an individual being accused to have partaken in a homosexual videotape is not news. Right. What makes it news
is who you are or who you purport to be.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Who you are, or at least who you say you are.
Right.
In opposition to that, that's what makes it news.
Right. And you know, and again, hey, listen, so it's, you know, so anyone that knows me knows I'm not Jesus and Jesus Jr. and Jordan. You know, hey, so when your pastor starts talking about certain brands of liquor over the pulpit that are new, that he shouldn't know anything about,
right.
It's because he drinks. It's no big deal. Like there's all of us are jacked up, you know what I'm saying, in a certain way. But I think there's a certain you know, moral fiber that we shouldn't.
Right. And I mean, we should expect as clergymen to be held to a higher standard.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be, you know, an expectation. You know, but at the same time, it's appreciated that whenever something happens with your minister, please still remember that he's a man.
He's human. Absolutely.
He's a man.
Absolutely.
Forgiveness comes into place from the pews toward the pulpit as well.
Right. Should.
It should.
Should.
It's always expected from the pulpit to the pews that, hey, if you, are in a meeting and you blow up at the pastor, or the pastor's supposed to forgive you.
Right.
Well, that's not something that's a greater expectation than just a Christian man or Christian woman.
Right. Right. At the end of the day, he's a jar of clay. He's
exactly.
he's a crackpot like all of us.
Exactly.
I heard one of my favorite voices, mentor voice here in the city, and we may see him on the show if his schedule permits. James Dixon once told the story, and I think it was at IC3, but he told the story that members that he has stood by their side during their divorces left him.
Wow.
In his divorce. And so that affected me, because again, I don't want us to put our spiritual leaders on such a high standard that when they make a mistake, we run for the hills. And so in my own mind, that was a bigger deal than I think it would have been if it was a heterosexual relationship.
Right.
But either way, it's wrong. But again, I graded in my own mind. So that's that Homestead, Mesa Road, Tidwell, Northwest side coming out. And me. And again, truth be told, all unrighteousness is sin. And so, that's no greater sin than anything else. What does the church have to say about the confirmation of of this Supreme Court nominee that, it seems like this country is more divided now than ever before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so, and again, these are just things that are types of things that we'll discuss in a larger format in shows to come. But again, these kind of things is what troubles me. I think once we address and articulate that we are divided, then we can begin to fix the divide.
Right.
Right now, I don't think any. And again, this is bigger than any political party affiliation.
Right.
But it's almost where you can see the hatred between.
Oh yeah. It's vitriolic.
Yeah.
It's vitriolic because now we've devolved from partisan, which divides based on ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We have an idea that this should happen and should be handled in this way. On the red team and on the blue team, we have an idea on how this should be handled in this way, right? We've now devolved into political tribalism.
Wow.
That even in the subcategories of Republican and Democrat, that you now even have smaller little tribes that cannibalize the people that are wearing the red shirt and the people that are wearing the blue shirt. Because now it's how quote unquote Republican or conservative are you, and or how Democratic or progressive are you, and the middle is just being ripped apart and everything is going to the extremes.
Wow.
So it's no wonder why the division is getting worse, because instead of trying to work more towards a centrist solution for the people that are being governed, politicians, and hey, look, the goal of the politician is to be reelected. It's not a hard concept to understand. The goal of the politician is to get reelected. So if we as an electorate say that, hey, I want my politicians to do this, if you say jump, they're going to say how high.
Right.
But the problem is the people that are the people that are speaking the loudest are the extremists.
Right. Absolutely.
So what happens is now, in order for them to achieve the main goal, which is to be reelected, then they have to appease the loudest voices.
Right. Right. Right.
So that's where we are. Tribalism.
Sadly, someone did a video clip that I watched it either late last night or early this morning of and it was probably early this morning. I'm thinking of all of these senators give her all kinds of praise and accolades. She's resume is impeccable and will train whatever. But I'm going to vote no. And there was a series of all of them. I think one person even went as far as to say, this is my first time ever voting no on any Supreme Court justice, but I'm going to vote no.
Right. Tribalism. Just because you're on the other side, regardless of the content of your character, because and it's not even because it's easy for us to play the race card. It's not even a racial thing. It's tribal.
I believe it.
You're on the other team.
Right.
Regardless of your credentials, regardless of any of these different things, you are on the other team and we don't want you here.
Right. Right.
Now, are there elements in terms of race and culture? Of course.
Right.
Undeniable. Sure. Of course. But we've devolved into that tribalism. And so,
I usually don't I usually see black and white because things are often given us to us in black and white.
Sure.
But I think in this one instance, it has nothing to do with race.
It doesn't.
They view Clarence Thomas, who's a black man, greater than they view you. It has nothing to do with race.
Right.
Everything to do with.
But you got to look at the people that he surrounds himself with.
Absolutely.
They're all wearing the same T-shirt.
Right.
They're wearing the same color T-shirt.
Right.
And so when you're playing for the same team, they'll overlook certain things. If you're not playing for the same team, then even though the Supreme Court is not a political entity, who gets to sit on the Supreme Court is decided by a political entity.
Right. Right. Right.
So and now,
right.
It's been politicized because of this back and forth that's happened between Democrats and Republicans when they've tried to put forth their candidate to swing the Supreme Court closer one way or the other.
Right. Right.
In the past 30 years, it's gotten nasty.
Right.
And we just have lost decorum. And then also there's grandstanding. You have these senators that may want to run for president.
Right.
In 2024. So the campaign is never over. Does that make sense?
Right.
Because remember, the number one goal of a politician is to what?
Get reelected. Right.
Whether you maintain your same position or you get a new and greater position. So if you have some senators that have some national ticket hopes and dreams, well, the press coverage of a Supreme Court hearing is a great place for you to assert yourself
as a candidate for something.
Right. Well, even just to have visibility.
Right.
Because the biggest challenge in business and politics is both obscurity.
Right. Right.
If no one knows who you are, it really doesn't matter how good you are at what you do.
Right. Right. Right.
Got to break through obscurity. So if everybody's talking about this Democratic senator, this Republican senator, this independent senator from whichever state, right? Then they're in the conversation. So you got to understand that the issue that's on the table, on the floor, is never the only issue. That's just the topic.
Right.
That's just what we're talking about today. But you got politicians that are posturing themselves. They're trying to reassure their base to make sure that they don't get primaried by a more extreme person of their own party.
Right. Right.
And set themselves up to be known on the national stage so that if they do decide to run for president or they do decide to run for some other, maybe they want to run for governor in their state or, whatever the case may be, they have the visibility and the name recognition to do well.
So that's the explanation to all those Texans who are wondering why when Ted Cruz had something to say, he had to always pull out a prop. It was either this chart behind him
Right.
or a book that he pulled,
Right.
and
It's showmanship.
right.
Right. It's showmanship. It's like, hey, look, so now this is something that picture is going to go on conservative websites, and then it's going to be, hey, look at how, Ted Cruz is taking a stand for conservatism,
Right.
So on and so forth. Somebody else on the other side, look at how this person defended, Judge Jackson.
Right.
Look at how, let's say Cory Booker, he's give an example.
Right. The tears.
Yeah.
And while I believe that he was emotional, it just seemed to be a little
convenient.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so here's the deal. If you haven't figured it out by now, I take exception for certain things on either side.
Right.
I personally try to call things down the middle.
Right.
Because we should be able to evaluate evaluate an issue based on its own merits, not just subscribing to this echo chamber or this other echo chamber.
Right.
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 And so that's why it's important to be able to think critically and not just regurgitate the talking points. Because I find it amazing that you can look at hosts of cable TV shows or podcasts or whatever the case may be on one side of the aisle and on the other side of the aisle, and you can listen to different hosts. And on one side, I can hear the same talking points.
Right.
I can hear the same thing.
Right.
It's almost like they sent out an email. For the red team, this is what we're going to say today.
Right.
For the blue team, this is what we're going to say today.
Right.
It's amazing how this works in terms of the talking points. So, if you want to be a critical thinker, then you've got to look beyond that and understand that they're playing a game.
Absolutely.
They are playing the game.
Absolutely.
And they're playing to win.
Absolutely. And whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Whatever you have in terms of your flavor of political thought, make sure you take political action.
Right, absolutely.
In order to affect the change that you want to see.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that some of us in the secular world and the church world, some do better than others.
Right.
And I'm not trying to inform your politics, but more inform how you think about politics.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've and we've talked about this in some private moments, but because of where we are and where we've been, and you talked about Pastor Skinner and the great work that's going on at Good Shepherd. Pastor Skinner knows that I call him the mayor of Northeast Houston, and all the good things that Good Shepherd's doing, and just Northeast through and through, and especially where we are in our culture and in our world, and all that's going on, and social unrest, and Northeast Houston is considered a food desert.
Yeah, which just to because of that, we actually have partnered with the Houston Food Bank.
Okay.
And every first Saturday of the month, we are a distribution point for the Houston Food Bank at Good Shepherd.
Good Shepherd.
Yes.
See, okay. So here's my question, and we can say this and throw some stuff around, and we'll pick up in episodes to come.
Right.
On the heels of a global pandemic, and we're starting to kind of come back out from it, even though COVID is here. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
But we're starting to kind of come back out from it. And I think that time of shutdown made us look at church differently. There are at least 4 congregations on the top of my mind now that were huge, vibrant, moving congregations before the pandemic, that are now, no longer in their buildings and displaced and looking for, so just kind of thinking through that. Do you think the church can ever be again, what it was or greater?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do local congregations need to do to make it happen? Because again, like COVID
Sure.
stopped corporate worship, but it shouldn't have stopped community work.
Correct.
And so that's one of the things that we were never really doing anyway.
Right.
So again, and I know some churches are like, I think part of the reason why I think the church will never get back to that is because what our aim is, what our goal is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you hear people say, well, I can't wait to get back to 3:00 program. If it's about 3:00 programs for you, you missed it.
You missed it
already.
You missed it. And that's what I was going to say is that I think a question that we should ask is that should we go back to the way that we were doing it, or should we really focus our attention around how should we do church going forward?
Right.
Because if we're restricting the gathering of the church to just an hour and a half in a building on Sunday morning, I don't think that is the goal.
Right.
So I think that number one, we've been forced in the pandemic to make utilization of technology that I think a lot of churches were not making use of.
Okay.
So I think that push fast forward on the virtual worship, that push fast forward on small group meetings via Zoom, that push that technological advancement, so it should be less about the building. And I think that as leaders in the church, when you're to borrow your phrase, preaching to a camera instead of preaching to crowds, that I think should have put in perspective that the attention of the congregation is more important than the attendance in the building.
Wow.
Now that doesn't mean that that's not important for them to come into the building, because I do believe that it is.
Right.
And I think that in a safe way, and every church has to make that determination, whether, what is safe in terms of how we congregate together. Every church has to make that decision.
Right.
But the attention of the congregation, because what's the point of us having people in the building just to go through the motions?
Right. And I was just going to say, actually, that what you just said brings to the forefront, you can have attendance and still not have attention.
Correct.
But because of we've been forced to welcome this some virtual worship, now you can have their attention without necessarily having their attendance.
Right.
And so, and again, our goal should be to get their attention and not necessarily, because for a long time, we don't even ask how churches are doing anymore. It's how many people you're looking at, how many people you got, Doc.
Right.
And that's that. And, and so we'll lose the drive of the church on attendance. And I think more than anything, this is the generation where we need to be more open and understanding to the other things. Because the truth is, Jesus is coming back. Normal is not.
Yep.
Well, it's
right.
It's not. And so, especially, and again, I'm saying this so we can kind of bring some attention to, or let some of the pressure off of pastors or churches trying to make Easter weekend bigger than than we think it should. Because the truth is, you may not see a big crowd on Easter, but that doesn't mean you're taking a step backwards.
Right.
That only means that we need to look at some more creative ways to do what it is that God has given us to do. And so, again, I just and for those pastors that may be listening, hey, don't be discouraged if you don't see the humongous crowd that you're used to seeing on Easter's heretofore. Just keep plugging away, and we'll all get back to where God wants us to be. And so, again, this show is just going to be about, about us throwing some truth out, and just, and it may be truth that you could say at the barbershop, but not in the sanctuary on a Sunday morning.
Right.
And Sean may clean it up a little bit, and because all I got is North Forest education, I may not be able to, and you may hear some stuff, but try to catch the truth in between our difference in articulation. And so I'm excited about where we're going and what we're doing, and I pray that God does what He wants to do in this time that we'll be sharing weekly. Again, it's the TBT Show, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube. So again, join in with us. This is gonna be fun. Sean, you're gonna teach me a lot. You're gonna hope me.
Not as much as you're gonna teach me.
Nah, you're gonna
I've not attained. I have not attained, but no, I'm excited for us to, explore these topics together, and again, just to be able to provide, some real talk, around things that are relevant to our time.
Right.
I think that sometimes when we, people think that, church, King James Version of the Bible is these and thous, and that's old stuff for old people.
Right.
It's a living word.
Right.
And it speaks to all areas of life. And I think that there can be a healthy balance where we can examine what's going on in the secular world and still be saintly,
right?
If you will. So I'm excited about walking through that and seeing how everything comes about.
Amen. I am too. Listen, our time for the day is done, but keep your eyes and ears open, and we'll have some more content coming soon, along with a list of guests that I'll be excited to share these moments with. Listen, for those of you that are heading toward Easter weekend, and I'm excited about Easter weekend. And if you only go to church on Easter, that's fine. Get up and go. Again, we're excited about Easter, and as a sign-off note, the tomb is empty, so your life won't have to be. Mm-hmm. Get up and go to church and give him the praise. Again, my name is Anthony Moten, and our co-host is the Sean P. Aguilar, and we're happy to have you a part of the TBT Show.